Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful and somewhat spooky neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are delighted that you are here celebrating Halloween week with us. We have a wonderful guest for you today. She is a member of the Spooky Middle Grade Authors Group. Her name is Kim Ventrella, and she is here to celebrate two great books, The Secret Life of Sam and Hello, Future Me. Before we invite Kim in to celebrate her great books, we want to celebrate a brand new Reading with Your Kids certified great read, Abracadabra Whoopsie, written by Adam Kargman. It is a fantastic book. What should Jordy do when his younger sister keeps annoying him by wrecking his building, ripping his drawings, eating crayons, and invading his privacy? Can he make his sister disappear? In this delightful picture book by Adam Kargman, you get to see a child make a very poor choice by using a magic wand on his sister and then try to correct that choice. We think Abracadabra Whoopsie is a wonderful book and can be a really useful resource to help teach kids about how to get along and how to be patient and kind with your sibling. And we all know that can be very, very difficult. We love the illustrations in the book, and we really think that Abracadabra Whoopsie by Adam Kargman would be a fantastic addition to any family library. Check it out today. It is our latest Reading with Your Kids certified great read, Abracadabra Whoopsie. Joining us right now from the great state of Oklahoma, where she has two skeletons looking over her shoulder. Please welcome back to the show one of the spooky middle grade authors and the author of The Secret Life of Sam and also Hello, Future Me, Kim Ventrella. Kim, how are you?
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I mean, I'm doing pretty well considering the amount of skeletons in my apartment right now.
I'm telling you, it is great. Well, there's one that's just, kind of there, and it's a skeleton, but the other skeleton is very, very dapperly dressed.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they can't just go around naked. She's a very fancy lady skeleton that I have beside me.
And does she have a name?
Actually, no, but I have another skeleton that you can't see that has been named Shirley because she used to be in the background of all of my, virtual visits and online videos that I would do. And so one of my teacher viewers named her Shirley.
Well, I gotta ask because, you can't see what I see. I am seeing this wonderful young woman with this huge smile on her face. Every time we speak, she is happy, but she's always writing these fun but really dark and kind of spooky books. What is it? What is turning you on to this genre?
I do. I love the dark and the spooky, and there are so many things. There are so many reasons, I guess, and it goes back to when I was a kid, and I was always drawn to things like the fabulous haunting artwork and the scary stories to tell in the Dark series, the Stephen Gamble illustrations that would just haunt your dreams. But what I realized early on was that, yes, these are scary stories, the stuff of nightmares, but there's something extraordinary and gorgeous, and there's some kind of glimpse that you get into something beyond the ordinary. So it kind of allows your imagination to see possibilities that otherwise you might never consider. So that's one reason. And another reason, I think scary stories are an excellent way to help you kind of tackle and try to understand those difficult real life issues. So especially my first two books, Skeleton Tree and Bone Hollow, both tackle the topic of grief and death, and they bring in versions of the Grim Reaper. So I use these spooky elements to explore this kind of real life tough topic. So that's another really cool thing that you can do. You get different entrees into human psychology, but there's also, it allows you to kind of find the beautiful sides of things that we usually consider scary.
Yeah. You're right. I never thought about that. The psychology. It does really gives you a glimpse into the psychology of the characters, and also helps us realize just how complicated human psychology is.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially if you as an author or as a reader can kind of humanize some of those monstrous figures, or even like a monstrous figure like death, then it helps you understand it in a different way that is less scary.
Well, we're so happy that you're here helping us celebrate Halloween week and introducing us to some great spooky middle grade books that we would love. I think we'd love to read them with our kids. Can you, before we get into this, wow, that's easy for me to say. Before we get into the specifics of your book, why do you think, or do you think that there's a benefit for families to read these books out loud together with their kids who obviously can read on their own? Or is there a benefit to co-reading these books with kids?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will say like when I was a kid, it was just like me like by myself reading the scary stories. But I think it's a very cool concept if you can have the whole family together sharing in those things and like starting conversations, because pretty much any book can be a great entree into some sort of conversation. Like it gives you a framework and a certain vocabulary that you're both sharing. And so that's a great moment that you can kind of broach some of these topics. So yeah, absolutely. I think if you can do it, it's super important. It'll be a super memorable experience for your kids.
Yeah. Tell us, why don't we start right off with The Secret Life of Sam? What's this book all about?
So The Secret Life of Sam it comes out end of September, and it's kind of following in the tradition of my first two books in the sense that it's exploring an aspect of grief. The main character, Sam, in the beginning, he lives where he's always lived in Louisiana on the swamps. Like his house goes like right out over the swamps, one of those ones with the little dock like on stilts. And he grew up, him and his dad, every day out there fishing, cracking open ice cold orange crush. And his dad would always weave tall tales, but he never quite knew like which stories were real and which ones were made up. And then his dad dies suddenly in a car accident before the story starts. And then so when we meet him, it's the day that he's having to leave the swamps. He's being dragged halfway across the country by his aunt that he hasn't spoken to in 4 years. And he doesn't know what this rift in the relationship is about. Like he doesn't know why they haven't spoken in 4 years, because they used to be close. And so he's dragged all the way to Oklahoma. It could not be more different from where he's from. Like it's dry, it's empty, it's flat. It's a super small town in Oklahoma, and he hates every single thing about it until right near his school, he discovers this tree with a strange hollow, like a gaping mouth. And it's a portal that allows him to be with his dad once again, but only for a few minutes a day. And it only opens at the exact time of his dad's death. But the catch is that it won't stay open for long. So now he has to discover, like, is there a way that he can be with his pa once more for good? And so that's a little bit about the story. And it was fun drawing on two different places that I have lived before, because I've lived in both Louisiana and I live in Oklahoma now. So it's kind of interesting, like bringing all that together.
Wow. My mind is just blown here. I'm, thinking we have this beautiful oak tree in our backyard that we're going to have to take down just because it's a danger. And trees are so magical, and then imagining this portal that is open and you can visit your dad and he's gone, and ay. Talk about a fun book. That is right. The 8th grade me is just imagining how much fun that would be.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. And one of the fun things is, so when he goes through the tree, like into this other world that is very much like his home, but it's also all heightened. So it's like the tall tales that his dad used to tell him about the swamp kind of come to life in that other world. So it was kind of interesting too to explore like this other version of his home and how he's able to like experience some of his past stories and memories in this very unique way.
Wow. You mentioned that your the other books that you've talked about here in the show deal with grief, and now Secret Life of Sam also deals with grief. Is this a way for you to deal with some grief that you've experienced in your life?
I think yes, and also just the idea in general, because I have mentioned before, it was just like a really funny discovery that I made probably about a year ago now. I was going through some old boxes and I discovered the first book I had ever written. In 6th grade, I had totally forgotten it existed until I opened this box, and we had an assignment to write and illustrate our own picture books. And my story was called The Wednesday Morning Club, morning with a U. And it told the tale of these 5 adults that each had lost someone they love, and every chapter like outlined how they lost that person. And then they come together and they form this club to like deal with their grief called the Wednesday Morning Club. And it has this very tragic ending where the main character dies in a fire, and the last meeting of the Wednesday Morning Club is at his funeral. And I was like partly laughing at myself when I read this tragic ending, but I was also like, okay, so I forgot this ever existed, but 6th grade me was so desperate to understand grief and death and what it meant to lose someone that the first story I ever wrote was on that topic. And then having forgotten about that, my first 2 published books, and then now what will be like my 4th published book are all on that topic. So yeah, it's just, it's something that we all grapple with, and writing about it from different like perspectives is just, it's all about like trying to understand it myself.
Yeah. I have to ask, was your teacher horrified when you turned that book in at that report?
Probably so, but like looking back, I'm pretty sure that none of the ideas I came up with from much, much, much younger were things that were expected of someone my age. So they probably expected it by then.
Okay, because I'm imagining now, there's some of the school districts that I visited in my years of performing educational magic shows. And I just know that if a kid turned in a story, an assignment like that, they'd be calling counselors and interventions, and there'd be all sorts of investigations.
Okay, well, in 2nd grade, I wrote a story that won a writing contest, and it was something, I can't remember the details, but it was kind of like my version of Roald Dahl's short story, The Landlady, and I can't remember exactly what made my version unique. But basically, it was about this lady who owned a guest house and murdered all of her guests and like put them on display around the hotel. And obviously I did not understand copyright law in 2nd grade, because I think the story was like quite similar to the original one, but like all I know is it like won this writing contest, and I'm sure some people were horrified, but that was what I was writing about back then. So
2nd grade, 7 years old. Okay. But you're absolutely right, though. The middle grade years are those years when we kind of, we're in this transition where you're kind of the top dog at school, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh wow, I really don't know anything. Last week I thought I knew everything because I was a cool kid, and now suddenly it's like, I'm kind of like a baby adult and I don't know anything. And grief is one of those things that we're aware of. I don't know if it's any better now. I know my family 100 years ago, they didn't talk to us about it at all. I mean, there was a kid in our neighborhood who drowned, and the parents went to the funeral in the wake. The kids weren't allowed, and we didn't talk about it. And he's gone, and it just wasn't addressed. And I think that's probably true still with a lot of families and a lot of kids.
Yeah, I think you're right. It really depends. My family was that same way too, and still is. So there's really no like processing of these things that happen. So probably that's partly why I've used the stories that I write as a way to process that. And I feel like the stories have actually had the effect of making me someone who is much more willing to talk about things like that. Like, over these years of having written more and more stories, it's giving me like the language to talk about stuff like that. So whereas before I was much more closed off before I started to address this stuff in stories. So it can be like really helpful for the author and also for the readers, just like giving them this language that they could use to discuss these things.
Yeah. Well, we've talked a lot here in the show about bibliotherapy, and I think it works both ways. I think writing can be very therapeutic for authors, whether they're published or not, and it's, great works and great stories are a great way to open up conversation, as you were saying, that can really lead to some breakthroughs in relationships and in understanding ourselves and understanding the world. Hey, I want to understand what Hello Future Me is all about. You talked about your 6th grade you. I talked about 8th grade me. Who are we talking about in Hello Future Me?
So Hello Future Me was a really fun departure for me. So if we're talking about like just the cover alone, it's kind of this explosion of like pink and glitter, and people may not think about me when they think about the cover of this book. But the funny thing is that the voice, it's the only book I've written in first person, and the voice is actually just channeling my inner thought. So it's like putting myself really on the paper. And June, the main character, she's also very much like me when I was a kid. She's a super planner. She loves to make lists, action plans, and like she totally believes in positive thinking. Like if she can, if she imagine that something is going to happen, she can accomplish that thing. And she's also a matchmaker. So she has set up like several couples in her quirky small town. So she's absolutely shocked and devastated when out of nowhere her parents announce that they are getting a divorce. Like she cannot imagine it because her parents are amazing and perfectly in love, and how could this happen? So of course, as a matchmaker, she is determined that she is going to stop it from happening. So she uses all of her planning skills with her best friend, all of her lists, and does everything she can think of to try to get them together. But when that doesn't work, she turns to this new mysterious shop in town filled with objects that claim to have magical properties. Now, she doesn't believe it at first, but one of the objects she gets from the shop is like this super cheap bargain bin $1 laptop that appears to be broken. But when she turns it on, she starts getting instant messages from her past and future selves. And her future self warns her, don't you dare go back to that shop and use any of those objects to try to get your parents together again. So of course she does, and the magic goes horribly, horribly awry. So, she has to learn that there are some things in life you can't control.
It's such an important lesson. And told in such a fun way.
It is. But we still try. And that was another lesson she kind of learned, is that, you know what, sometimes you just have to go through it to really learn the lesson. Like people can give you all of this great advice, but sometimes you just have to experience it for yourself.
And unfortunately, some people have to experience it again and again and again and again.
Yes, so true. It is so true. So yeah, it was an interesting book to write, and it was interesting to do something that was much more, just like quirky and light and humor. And she lives in this really fun town too. So it's a made up town called Tanglewood Crossing that is supposedly the Bigfoot sighting capital of the world. And so their little downtown is this hodgepodge of colorful shops, and every one of them is Bigfoot themed, and they have Bigfoot tour buses every day. And so there's just this kind of strange like air of mystery and magic about the small town where she lives.
Wow, this sounds like a lot of fun. It was a big departure from the way you usually write. Do you love it? Is this something that we're going to see more of these types of books from you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was like, in a way it was a departure. In a way it was very similar, just because like my other books, it has, I always infuse a little bit of humor, a lot of heart, a lot of whimsy, a little bit of magic. So it has all of those things, but just with some of those, even like funnier touches. And there is one little spooky element, I will say, in this book that's kind of hidden in there. So the shop's owner, the mysterious woman who has shown up in town and is selling all of these supposedly magical wares, she prices them all super low, but the price tag is a little deceiving because actually, you know, nothing is ever free. So you have to beware sometimes when a deal seems too good to be true. So she's a little bit mysterious in this story. But yeah, I definitely, foresee myself branching out and doing all kinds of stories. I love to tackle, every kind of like topic and genre. So I would love to explore every possible story at some point.
Awesome. Speaking of stories, do you have any fun memories of Halloween, goofy things that happened to you around Halloween time?
I'm trying to think. I do adore Halloween. I remember one year my best friend dressed up as a Kleenex box. That was probably my favorite. It was like my favorite costume. She would always do the most creative costumes. That was so fun. And one year we went as Wayne and Garth from Wayne's World. Do you remember that? No, the kids will be too young, but from Saturday Night Live. That was a fun costume. I don't know. I just love the aesthetic. And a couple of years ago, I very briefly, so this is probably just 2 years ago, I guess, I very briefly got to work in a haunted house because that had been my like lifelong just goal to do it. And so we have an amusement park here, that has a yearly like huge like Fright Fest thing where there's all these different like little mini sort of haunted houses that people can go through. So I was in the clown zone and I got to create my evil clown persona and basically like chase people through the haunted house and try to scare them as much as possible. So that was amazing. It was also exhausting.
I was just, yeah.
It's so tiring to scare people. Like I didn't realize how tiring it was going to be, but it really is.
Well, you know, I know myself, I've been in a couple of productions where you're just doing it's a very short part, maybe a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, but you're doing it over and over and over again. And you put so much energy into each one of those little minute performances that you're absolutely exhausted by the end of the night.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, because it's like in the haunted house, you have a little section, and when someone comes in, you are screaming, running, like chasing them, then they're gone, and then you reset, and a few seconds later, someone else comes in, and you're screaming, and you're doing that for like 7 hours. I was like, wow, it's no wonder every other person who worked here is like a teenager because I could not deal with it. But it was fun though. It was fun.
I have a piece of advice for any parents that are listening out there. If you go to a haunted house, I don't know if there'll be haunted houses this year. I hope so. It's safe, haunted houses. But if you go and you have somebody in your party that's especially kind of nervous about it, when you're waiting and you're in just out before you start or you go in that first room, repeat the person's name a couple of times, nice and loud. You know, like going, Kim, I can't wait. This is really going to be a lot of fun, Kim. Don't you think, Kim? It's going to be because one of the actors are going to pick up on it and go, Kim, and they're going to blow their mind.
Because I went through the whole training, which was interesting too, and they specifically tell you to listen for people's names so that you can listen them too. Oh, it's so funny.
Oh, man. Well, this has been so much fun, and I know folks would have a great time, and I really encourage kids are going to love reading Kim's books on their own, but I think that these would be really fun books, not only to read together at Halloween time, but any time of the year, because kids love spooky books. And so, where can folks go to learn more about all of the books that you've created?
Well, they can head over to kimventrella.com or find me on social media at kimventrella.
Awesome. We've had a great time talking to the author of 2 great new books. Hello, Future Me, a really fun book with a twist, a really kind of spooky twist, and The Secret Life of Sam. And we've been speaking with the author, Kim Ventrella. Kim, thanks so much for being back with us tonight.
Thanks so much for having me. It was awesome.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Lorian Lawrence. She is also a member of the Spooky Middle Grade Authors Group, and she'll be here to celebrate the Stitchers. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Earlier in the show, you heard me say that Abracadabra Whoopsie by Adam Cargman is our latest Reading with Your Kids certified great read. If you are the author of a fantastic children's book, you may be looking for ways to help your book stand out from the crowd of books that are published every single month. How about being able to display our big, beautiful Reading with Your Kids certified great read seal of approval on your website, on your book, on your ebook? It really is an attention grabber. Our new logo is absolutely fantastic, and our new updated Certified Great Read program is really fantastic too. You can learn all about it by going to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page. Scroll down to Certified Great Read applications to find out about this fantastic program. Speaking of fantastic, we need to thank the fantastic people who made today's episode so wonderful. Starting with our guest, Kim Ventrella. Be sure to check out her fantastic books, The Secret Life of Sam and Hello Future Me. I also want to thank my incredible team, starting with my daughter, Alejandra Doherty, my producer, Fatima Khan, my author ambassador, Peggy Cotto. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me, but most of all, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.